Hello, everyone. So my name is Vagdevi Meunier, and I am the founder and the executive director for the Center for Relationships. So if you'll bear with me, what we're going to do is take the first 5 minutes and introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing at Care Week. And I also want to talk a little bit about the Center for Relationships itself. And then we'll switch into the topic for this webinar, which is flourishing families in the pandemic, okay? A little bit about the Center for Relationships. We are a relationship counseling and education center that has been operating in the Austin, Texas area, but we're expanding to all of Texas. We have associates here on the call with us. That's what we call our counselors and our staff. And all of us share in the belief that human beings thrive in relationships. And we want to embody that perspective that when we are taught how to be healthy in relationships, all relationships, that we can really come from a position of strength. We can overcome anything that life has to offer. And so all of our associates are trained in relationship healing models. We have sort of a particular fondness for the Gottman method couples therapy. And for those of you that don't know, that reflects the work of Doctors John and Julie Gottman. And so all of our associates are trained in that, but we go beyond that. We have associates on our team that are trained in trauma-informed care, grief and life transitions, LGBTQIA+ populations, kink-friendly, poly-friendly, sex-positive, identity-affirming counseling. We think of ourselves as deliberately diverse, which means we're constantly asking the question, what would we be doing differently if we were to celebrate, affirm, and invite people of color, people of varieties of identities, people of different religions, classes, and other identities, socio-cultural identities. And I will invite my associate Toya to take it away.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Vagdevi. I am so honored and proud to be here among my colleagues for this 8th annual Care Week. I think I've attended, this is my maybe 4th or 5th one. So proud to be a part of it. And I love what this means for the community, because we are a community-based mental health center. And it is important that we offer things and go out in the community. And because of the pandemic, we haven't really been getting out like we used to, but this is a way of offering some of our knowledge and expertise and things that have particular meaning to each of us, that we can provide to whoever wants to hear or learn out in the world, right? And so I'm really proud to be here. I think Lisa should go next.
My name is Lisa Dreher. I am a graduate intern here at the Center for Relationships in my final semester of studies for marriage and family therapy. One of the main reasons I chose the center to come work, other than all of these fabulous humans you see in front of you, is the opportunity and that they provided in doing this with all of you. Their passion for providing information to the public is something that's really important to me, and I'm really happy to get to be here. Like Dr. Meunier said, our main focus is helping you have healthy relationships, and my passion is helping you have healthy relationships in your home with your children. I guess I'll pass it over to Danielle.
Hi, my name is Danielle. So I will be discussing different ways and different things to think about in starting your mental health journey, and giving you some questions to ask any provider that you see. And I'll pass it on to Kara.
Hi, I'm Kara, and I, kind of similar to what Lisa was talking about, I am really excited to help people with all the relationships in their homes. So whether that's the two of you as a couple, or whether you've got kids in the house with you that we're working with too. And I specifically have a bit of a brain and cognitive science background, and I am going to pass it off to Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany. I am also an associate here on staff at the Center for Relationships. I am a licensed professional counselor associate, and then also a marriage, couples, family counselor associate. It is a mouthful, so I have to take a deep breath before I say the title, but yes. I work with individuals, adults, children, teens, and couples. I am also Gottman Level 1 trained. Props to thank you, Dr. Vagdevi, for that. And I'll pass it on to Oliver.
Thanks, Brittany. So I'm Oliver Davidson, and I'm one of the graduate interns at the center. I'm also a doctoral student at UT. And at UT, I research mindfulness and self-compassion, and I bring a lot of that to my therapy work at the center. I'm also really happy to be able to share it with you all this week. AJ or Lizzie, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll go. Hi, I'm Lizzie Montana. I'm the operations coordinator here at the Center for Relationships. I have been here, this will be my 6th month now. Milestone, I think. So we are, I'm very excited to be a part of the center, and just like our attendees, I am a sponge and I'm looking forward to learning everything I can this week with you guys. So really excited to be here. And AJ, you're up.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yeah, so as she said, me and Lizzie are the admin support for this Care Week event, and also admin support for the center in general. Personally, I'm the brand director, and basically I just run the online side of things, advertisements, and kind of make sure that the community reaches events like these. And me and Lizzie are going to be in pretty much every workshop this week, in the chat or in the intro. You'll always see us, and we love to see all of you. So yeah, we're really excited to all come together this week and celebrate this service together. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. So happy to have our team, and so happy to kick off Care Week. What we're going to do now is start talking about the topic for this webinar, which is flourishing families during the pandemic, and we're going to make it a panel discussion. All right, so who wants to kick it off? What has the pandemic done to families? Let's all jump in.
Definitely have had to spend more time with family, being quarantined together. So learning a lot of ways to adjust to those dynamics of being at home together.
Yeah. So yeah, being kind of stuck with your family inside a home. All right. What else?
Yeah, it felt like the weekend that never ended, right? We were used to being together as a family on Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, the adults go to work and the kids go back to school, but this time it didn't end. And it really, I think, brought up for a lot of people how much actual time we don't spend together as a family, and the challenges that came along with that.
I want to invite any of our participants to ask questions, make comments. If you're making comments, please feel free to do that in the chat box. But if you have questions you want our panel to answer, we have a Q&A function. And so if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can do a Q&A. If you click on that, it will take you to a box where you can enter your question. Yeah. Anybody else want to add what the pandemic did to families?
I'll go next. It was, jumping off of what Toya said, it was definitely the longest spring break ever. That's how my little pod of neighbors talked about it. It just went on and on and on. And it was, what day is it? I don't know what's happening. We all became teachers at home, and the kids, I have 2 little ones at home, so they became very familiar with their devices and screen time constantly. And that lasted up until I guess this new school year in the fall of 2021, because last year was just insane. But yeah, it taught us how to all work together, and parents working and kids having to be there, and everyone just needing everyone all the time, and also needing alone time. So it was learning for everybody, for sure.
I think the parts of our family that benefited were the kids who got to see mom and dad coming and going more often, and the pets.
Yes.
Right? Many of our pets have never seen us this much.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think something I saw in my own home and also in just talking to friends is it really seemed to highlight areas. Maybe it was something that was just a small problem before, and now all of a sudden, once we were going through the pandemic, something that was small was now had a giant spotlight on it, and it could no longer be ignored.
Exactly.
I think going off of what Lisa said, I think it's a really good point, is I think we all had these routines to sort of cope with the little problems. Like we were so busy and we had so many routines and patterns that we could sort of just like go along with. And once those weren't there, we didn't have those kind of like those coping strategies in place and those things to keep us busy and distracted. And we kind of had to confront them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a comment in the chat box from one of our participants saying one of the consequences of the pandemic was having difficulty finding time for self-care.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you can relate to that, and also if you have any tips for self-care. What did you all do?
I think one thing that I've, pardon the eternal allergies of Austin, that one thing that I've noticed in myself and some of the people around me and my family and close friends is that when you're working from home and the kids are kind of in and out of school with varying, COVID exposures and needing to be home for a bit, it's harder to have a self-care routine. So some of the things that we used to kind of rely on is like, okay, like this week is going to look roughly like the next is sort of out the window. And so I know for people around me, kind of building in like at least a once a week check in with yourself, whether that's journaling, meditating, going for a walk, whatever kind of form that takes, where you get to see like, okay, how hard was this week? Like what things were going on? What do I need? Because sometimes what you need is to try to clean the house and have it stop, looking like a tornado went through. And sometimes what you need is to go to bed early, and being able to check in with all the different types of self-care that might benefit you and your home.
Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying, Kara. It's important to kind of do the thing that will offer you some self-care that you need to do for yourself, and maybe for the benefit of everyone else. I know that for me, my house became something like a hurricane had come through, and it bothered me, but it didn't bother me as much as needing to feel like I needed to just get out of the house. And so many times when I had the bandwidth to do something extra, instead of cleaning up, I would go outside and take the dog and go for a walk, or take my kiddo and say, let's get out of here. And then not allow myself to feel badly because I didn't fold those 4 loads of clothes on the couch, right? And say I did something that was more needed or more important for us right now.
Yeah. And I think at least a benefit of living where we do is that in Austin and other parts of Texas, if you're joining us from here, we often can be outside year round. So that's been a big benefit, is the sunshine. And I know even like the couple of nice days that we had earlier this week, just getting outside and getting to kind of do some hanging out in the yard and do some yard work felt like even just getting out of the house that much was really nice, because we spend so much time in our homes now.
As therapists, we have sedentary practices anyway. So we go somewhere, we sit down, pretty much all day long, but at least I was getting up and going somewhere. I was, moving in between sessions from one office to another, or just going outside and talking to people. And all of a sudden, it felt like I was stumbling out of bed and stumbling into my office, 2 steps away, and then stumbling out of my office, and there's the kitchen, and there's the bedroom. And oh my gosh, I never saw a small family. I've grown children. I never saw a small family make that many dishes in a day. It was all of a sudden like, what is going on? Well, we used to all be out of the home. So during the day, we wouldn't have a lot of dishes. And now all of a sudden, the dishes were piling up constantly. And I saw a comment about how she began to just get more flexible about the house being a tornado. And I really relate to that. It was such a good learning for me about not setting impossible standards and then feeling bad that I'm not meeting them, but to just kind of go, this is the way it is. It is what it is. Thank God I wasn't having to clean for company. It was like, nobody's coming over, so I can pretty much, let things go. I will say one tip for me that really, really worked. It didn't occur to me for the first, 6 months after the pandemic started, that I was safe in my car, that I could take my car and go somewhere. It was like, why didn't I think about that? But that was the best thing, being able to get in my car, turn on the music, and go for a drive. And here in Austin, I have never seen the roads that empty. And it was a pleasure driving around. And so that became a huge self-care for me, even if it was just 10 minutes and I just drove in a circle around my neighborhoods and came back. Something about having that closed space, the music, giving myself an opportunity to just get away from everything made a big difference.
I completely relate to, needing that little bit of space, I think, and, also being flexible with the house being a mess at times. But I think the one thing I did learn eventually, it took a while, is to set boundaries in the house. So I picked my room as like the one room that was off limits to the kids. And I was just like, look, you can have the rest of the house, like we'll deal with it. Just don't follow me in here. And so you just had that one room you could just go into where they would like stop at the doorway, and noise canceling headphones. So you could just like give yourself a few minutes of peace in a quiet house if you just need to breathe or journal or do something. It's like one room that wasn't messy, that you could control, and just have that little bit of space, which I think is similar to your car driving around Austin.
Yep, exactly. I love it. I love it. Any other tips for self-care?
I'll go again, Oliver, to piggyback off of boundaries. Part of not knowing what day it was at the beginning of it was our neighbors. It was a rotating door. No matter if we had 3 or 4 houses, and it was just continuously rotating. And whether we were trying to work or get the laundry done or something, it was being able to say no. That was the biggest thing that I've learned, because there was nothing else to do. And so just chunking down my time and saying no, from, no one's allowed in my house before noon. There's no coffee dates, or just something small like that was a big thing. And I forget who said going to bed, but that was also a big thing, especially with the kids, because there was no school for a long time. Therefore, there was no bedtime. So just no, we are going to bed. 9 o'clock, leave me alone. That's it, done. That was a huge thing that turned it around after the first couple months there.
Very true. I'm curious, for those of you that are single, have lived by yourselves, what was that like for you? Both in terms of not having time for yourself or self-care, like what did your self-care get affected? And if it did, what did you do to manage that?
I definitely had to be more intentional with my relationships. Like, okay, let's maybe have like a Zoom party and let's all watch this one thing, or let's have like cocktails tonight, like happy hours, something like that. Just something to have some type of interaction, since we couldn't physically see each other, but still being able to connect and do something fun. So that was something I did. And Disney Plus has that watch the movie at the same time as your family members or anyone. So we would do stuff like that. Self-care and Disney movies, that's right up my alley.
So we all got excited because we could just move our entire lives onto Zoom. And we thought we would do that for 6 months, 9 months, and then we'd be done. And when it started to get to the 2.5 year mark, have you experienced Zoom fatigue? And then what do you do to manage that?
I can definitely talk about that. I for sure noticed hitting a Zoom fatigue point where it felt like, oh my gosh, I have to get on my computer and talk to people through my screen again, rather than a like, oh, connection, like I get to see people and kind of, and I still go through waves of that, right? Especially because we connect to people in work all the time over Zoom. And then when it comes to my personal life with people that I haven't seen that I want to connect with over Zoom, I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired from my day of doing it.
Yeah.
And so what's been really helpful for me is making sure that my like hobbies don't happen on screens, because I found that I only have so much like mental ability to sit still and look at a screen and focus. And so making sure that, you know, my hobbies are, I've always been a big runner, and so including that, but also just things that are like physically in my space where I'm interacting with them. So knitting, or, you know, doing art, or just going for a walk, and things where I'm like interacting with the world, playing with my dog, so that I'm not kind of trying to make my whole life fit onto the screen of my computer. Because I know that that's helped me a lot in not hitting that wall quite so hard.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I want to invite our attendees. If you have a question that you want to put in the quick Q&A box, you're welcome to do so. You can also raise your hand and join the conversation. If you want to make a comment, or if you want to ask a more complicated question. So feel free to raise your hand and I'll give you permission to talk, and then you'll be able to chat with our panelists. I'm curious if any of you have a question for our panel.
Sometimes, even though, right, I'm a therapist, I talk to people all day for a living. Sometimes I wonder if my experience of going through the pandemic and where I am in that journey is the same or similar to other people. For example, if I leave my house and go to Target or HEB, I'm blown away by the number of people that I see in the store. And I think, is everybody out here except me?
Right.
And so I'm always wondering, am I being too conservative? Should I just don't know. So I'm wondering, because the people watching are random, right? So maybe just asking the question like, where people are, how the pandemic has affected them would be helpful, right, to hear and know.
So you're inviting the attendees to tell us how the pandemic has affected them. Yeah. So you
If
can put that
anybody,
in the chat. Yeah, you can put that in the chat box. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you so that you can talk to us. Yeah. AJ's put the question back into the chat box. Maybe one of you all can answer that question while we're waiting for one of our attendees to say something. You know what I was thinking, Toya, as an answer to your question is, for me, the biggest challenge was mental health. Because physically, the pandemic didn't change a lot. I still could drive my car. The weather didn't change. Well, it changed in a big way, but on a day-to-day basis, it looked the same. I was still doing my job, right? Even though that felt different doing it online, at least I was grateful. I still have a job. I'm still able to show up for my job. But the feeling of isolation, the stress about the virus, trying to make the decisions, like you were saying, there was no real good guidance on should we go out or not? Should we be doing this or not? It took us a long time to sort of get information that really felt solid. Okay, so now we know this. Even then, even to this day, I think there's still places where people are spreading misinformation or the information is kind of vague. It's not entirely clear. I know that the school systems struggled with that. All of that caused a lot of stress. And when we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people dying, whether you know them or not, it creates a feeling of ambiguous loss. Like we're all walking around with a mini depression because there's just so much grief. We're all worried about our families. We're all trying to stay healthy. And we know that there are people out there that are getting hospitalized, that are not making it. It impacts that. It affects our mental health. And I'd love to hear from all of you all, as well as our attendees, how did it affect your mental health? I know as a therapist, this was the first time in my 40-year career where I felt like I was going through a traumatic experience at the same time as my clients. So I was trying to show up for my clients, and in the background, I'm going through the same thing they're going through, you know? That was quite a challenge. Any thoughts on?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like something that's made a big difference for me is just being able to connect with people over that experience. You know, grieving is, of course, we do some of it on our own, but also, you know, when you experience a loss in your life, other people around you are often experiencing that loss as well. And so you get to connect with them over sharing memories of the lost individual and just having space for all of that. And so trying to build in connection points where because we're in this extended grief and loss stage too, it's not one loss that then we're grieving and recovering from, not trying to like focus on it and dwell in it and get too stuck in that place, but making sure to come check in on it regularly with the people in my life and say, you know, yeah, wow, okay, this newest variant, wow, okay, yeah, this happened this week, and it's, you know, or like it's been 2 years now, and kind of using those as moments to see how are we all doing, what is going on, and creating some patterns with other people, like some healthy points of connection around that grief, so that it's not alone, especially since a lot of the grief is, I mean, both for the lost individuals and hospitalizations, and also loss of our lives before the pandemic, where we can't do things in the same way that we did before. And so I know that's made a big difference for me, is kind of balancing with some relationships, trying to still give space to all the happy, quote unquote, normal things, you know, the daily things in life now. And then also taking space out for the grieving every once in a while.
Kara mentioned something that stood out to me, which was sort of this way in which we're grieving the loss of, you know, life before the pandemic. And that struck a chord with me in regards to our kiddos, right? My son now is in the 7th grade, but he's constantly talking about what happened in the 5th grade before the pandemic. I don't get to go on any more field trips. I didn't get to go on that field trip. That was my favorite teacher, and I didn't get to have my school year with the teacher. I saw that teacher the other day and I said, look, you need to come to my house and sit with him and do some talking to him because he's not over you. But there is this way in which a lot of things happened in his world that he's still really trying to make sense of and is struggling to do that. I'm wondering, for those of you in the Flourishing Families program that are here, if you could begin to talk about, you know, what this has sort of meant for our kiddos too.
Yeah.
We actually have a question, so maybe I can read out the question and you can kind of include your answer to the question in what you say. Are there good ways to get a break when you can't get a break? My kids are toddler and elementary age. For the first 9 hours of some days, I'm their only support and need to find ways to catch breaks without being able to go do anything. And I'm assuming they mean, you know, go somewhere out because you can't leave the toddler and the elementary school kid and get in your car, nor can you close the door and say, don't come in here. You might not find things in your house in the same place that they were if you do that. So if you want to add your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think as far as kind of trying to get a break without getting a break, or getting a break while not getting a break. Some things that come to mind for me are really trying to lean into the activities that feel easier for you to do with your kids. So, and giving yourself grace to do that, where of course there are going to be times where your kids are really interested in an activity that for you requires a lot more energy to like start doing it than something else. And so just trying to build in more of the like lower kind of activation threshold activities so that it's not taking as much out of you, at least as early in the day or as often. And giving yourself some grace that like, this is a weird period. If your kids are spending more time on screens, if you need them to go spend more time with their neighbors and with their grandparents and with other people, then maybe you would ideally have liked or some of that, then like, we're all coping as best as we can. Kids are very resilient, and we are going to continue to find out the different ways that they're coping at different ages. But especially when you're looking at a toddler in elementary school, like try your best to build yourself in some evenings with a babysitter or someone that can come in and, I mean, maybe even see if a babysitter can stay overnight. That way, even if you and your partner have like a grown-up date night, then you also get to hang out and drink your coffee and, you know, have kind of a little bit longer time when you're not on. Because if we think about it also as like, you've got this resource bank that you're pulling from constantly to take care of your kids. And before, you used to get to put some chips in when they went to school and put some coins in when you had date night and when your partner was watching them and when you went to work and did all the grown-up things and that we need the activities to take a little bit less coins out for each kind of thing. So if reading to your kids is lower activity, or watching a movie together, or going to the playground where you can kind of watch them play and kind of just, you know, you get to zone out a little bit because you're not in charge of the activity, you're kind of just monitoring for safety. Just checking in with yourself about like, okay, so what are the things that or the ones that give you energy? If you like swimming and hanging out at, you know, water, can you go walk to the greenbelt or a pool or something, and kind of trying to align some stuff and giving yourself the grace to say, you're doing your best too. Kids are resilient. no one's dealing with an ideal circumstance. And the most important part of parenting is that you're showing up. And so from there, we're all going to navigate out.
Yeah, Toya, I wanna highlight something you were saying earlier, which is that we do have a Flourishing Families program. As a matter of fact, our theme for this Care Week this week is Flourishing Families, and I think that families have come together and really been resilient through the pandemic for the most part. Parents have become, you know, multitaskers de jour and have learned how to work in their jobs and careers in the bedroom and run out and cook lunch for everybody and then run back in, or, you know, become homeschooling parents, which they never planned on. And we've all survived it. And I was thinking, as you were talking, Kara, that a lot of parents have shared with me some really, really creative ways in which they take breaks. So one parent shared with me that she decided to start a garden, and they would spend an hour every day out in the garden, right? And she could give her kids plastic shovels and rakes, and then she could just let them go at it. And they destroyed a patch of grass, and they, you know, planted things that were never going to grow. And it was fine because it meant that it occupied them. When she was cooking, or another parent shared, when she was cooking, she would just take a bunch of all-purpose flour and some water and a couple of pots and pans and put her kids down on the floor and let them cook right along with her. And they would make a mess that she would have to clean up, but it was totally fine because they felt like they were cooking dinner with her, and they might even like make something out of whatever the kids made, right? So not really looking for how can I take them out and do something. You can have a toddler folding towels. You'll have a perfectly wonky set of towels, but who cares, right?
They're going to
That
get
I know
unfolded
my
anyway.
children folded and unfolded one towel 100 times and thought it was the most hilarious thing. So
Yeah. And I think that also reminds me how much, especially when you're looking at toddlers and elementary school aged kids, they're copying everything that your parents do, right? So things like give them some flour and some water and let them cook alongside you on the floor. Like you have to make dinner at some point, right? Like whatever that means to you, like you need food. And they just want to be like you. They want to try the same activities, and being able to kind of accept that, like, okay, we're going to give them a parallel task that's a safe, kid-friendly version of this. That yes, maybe the patch of grass is destroyed, maybe half of the laundry, you know, is a mess, but it's there. Or having your kids, you know, yeah, like make a game out of cleaning up all together, da da da, like. And that's kind of that same thing of like the threshold levels where like you can't be catering to what your kids most want to do all the time, right? And it's not sustainable, certainly not for 2 years. And so you're going to have to find ways to integrate them into the things that you need to do, and you know, yeah, be able to kind of have them join you, because that is the most exciting thing for any kid, is getting to pretend they're a grown up for a few minutes. And so if they get to be like mom and make dinner, that's very thrilling.
I'll piggyback off that. I have a toddler and an elementary aged kid. So the biggest thing for me, once I learned the boundaries and figured out things, was setting a schedule for just meal times. So yeah, we're gonna eat breakfast. 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock was lunchtime. We're all going to eat together at 5 or 6, and just making sure that that was done was the biggest grace of all of it. So, and as far as the activities, you know, one movie at least every single day, every single day, 2, 3 o'clock, whatever, because the summers get really hot here. So whenever it was the hottest, we're putting a movie on. We're not doing anything else. but sitting down, watching a movie. And if you don't want to do that, then that's your time to go play. And that's also my quiet time. So just doing that. Definitely the cooking part. My son he just turned 10. So he makes the chicken cutlet with me. So we dip it in the egg and the breadcrumbs and the flour and stuff. And yes, they play with flour and water, both of them together. And it's pretty cute. And also it makes a mess, but it's okay because it keeps them entertained for 20-30 minutes, and that's fine, whatever. And then they can help me clean up, because that's also something we learned in the pandemic, is you need to also clean up after yourself. The one other thing that took a big chunk of time was building a fort. So take out all the sheets, build a fort, hours of playtime. We would leave that stuff up for a couple days in a row, and it was a lifesaver.
I think these are all wonderful suggestions. I think the only thing I would add is just as parents, like really think, there's like the end of the day, you get that break, or there's like, getting a babysitter. I mean, those are all really important things to do, but then also really thinking about the little moments to take sort of mini breaks too. Like just kind of pay attention, because, like you're cooking or you're cleaning, you got the kid in your face, or they're starting to get like ramped up. And you just kind of pay attention to yourself and kind of think about what you need to in those moments, when you're starting to get overwhelmed. Like just think about those opportunities. Just take a little mini break for yourself. If there's something you can do in that moment, like if just like a scoop of ice cream or something will help you, or just taking a few minutes to breathe, or just something you can kind of do to just like get that moment. You're in the house, like the toddler will be okay. You can put him behind a baby gate for a moment, or find something to distract him, and just go take like 10 minutes for yourself in that moment to just kind of catch your breath and reset and do what you need to do in that moment. I think those can kind of help sustain you and get you through till you can get to that end of the day and really just like, let yourself relax. So I would kind of think about those moments as well.
Yep.
Hashtag end of the day.
That's right.
Best time of day, yeah.
Aw. We get a message from one of our attendees. LOL, you guys are the best.
Yeah. Oh.
We also got another message saying, thank you, Kara. Grace is my motto with clients, so it's important to give myself some of that also. Yes. Well, so we only have about 4 more minutes because we want to wrap up a little bit before noon in order to give people a chance to go to the next event. So if there's any last minute questions, you can either raise your hand or type it in the Q&A box. Any final thoughts, panelists? Anything you didn't get to share that you were hoping to share today?
For me, I just wanted to share that at the Center for Relationships, we do have this Flourishing Families program, right? And the therapists who are working in that program are passionate. Oh my gosh, so passionate about working with kiddos from all, absolutely, working with kiddos from all ages, families with kids, from adults, right, to children. Which I think is amazing, right? Working with family dynamics doesn't have to be just adults and as parents and kids, but just this Flourishing Families program that we have that is supporting families right now who might be dealing with things that have happened with the pandemic, or maybe not, but just putting a spotlight on family dynamics and familial relationships to heal them and to help support one another. I think we're doing a really good thing with this program.
And I would say this is an opportunity for families who've come through the pandemic and you're beginning to consider kind of going back out into the world and reconnecting and reestablishing your social life, or kids are starting to go back into school in person. That learning about how to flourish as a post-pandemic family is going to be an amazing thing. This is an opportunity if your children are experiencing worry. I think you were talking about your son experiencing some worry, and children they can come back out of the pandemic with a little bit of fear. It's a great time to make use of a service like a Flourishing Families program so that you just have a few sessions. And we use a very unique model called the reflecting team model. So we do teamwork when working with the family so that we can really help support multiple perspectives, multiple angles on a situation. And families who come together to process the pandemic and to process this experience are more likely to really recover from it. We know from research that secure attachment, one of the variables that helps that is what is called a coherent autobiography. Knowing who I am, knowing how I came to be here, knowing what I learned in childhood and how that's affecting me and how I can, what I want to change and how I can go about changing it, that's what a coherent autobiography is. And when we help children develop that, they become more resilient after they've been through a difficult time. Okay, folks, I think I don't see any more questions from our attendees. I want to thank all the panelists for your gracious presence today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.